Hello, Elaine. So good to see you, my friend, as you refer to us as colleagues, even though we have different titles, similar passions, interests, and first time that I get to welcome you visually on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. And, visually, it's a whole thing, right? You got to be ready in a different way.
Yes, you
I
do.
remember our very first conversation. I think you coached me a little bit about how to be in a quiet room and,
Oh, yeah.
have good sound, that kind of thing. This is a few years ago, of course, but now we're all so much more savvy in a certain way. And here we are.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so happy to be with you. I was also commenting on your hair before we started recording, but I'm going to mention it again because if people are listening, you might want to check out the video just to see Elaine's new hair. It's not new, but it's styled differently. I love it. And also, I want to focus on my appearance for a second because it was just Mother's Day here, well, in Canada. I know for you as well, Elaine. And I'm just gonna,
Get new earrings from
I
your
have
family.
new earrings gifted to me
Beautiful.
by my sons.
Wow.
My older son has just turned 12 and my younger is 9, and they had a market fair festival at their school on Saturday. They have it every year. It's a fundraiser. All the money goes towards the school. It's a public school, alternative school. We love it. And there's musicians who are part of the school, like parents. Like my husband played music, joining other parents, and there was food and all the kids and their classes, they make different crafts and products to
Oh,
sell.
wow.
So my son's class, my older son, they made jewelry. So it's sort of like an intersection of like what the kids want to do, but also which parents are available to help and what's their mastery. And so one of the parents who donated her time is an arts teacher at a high school. And so she's like, they made keychains and earrings. And so my son bought me the earrings that he made, which
That
I
is
thought was so,
incredible. I mean, they're beautiful. People do have to come see it
yeah,
on YouTube because those earrings are beautiful, and it's how special that he made them.
he made them.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful to see both of them because my younger one was like, okay, I want to buy you something for Mother's Day. He bought me a plant and he's like, I want to buy you. He gave me the earrings right away on site at the
Mhm,
day. And
mhm.
then so touching. And he bought earrings that another kid made. I don't know who, but they're hearts. So in one ear, I'm wearing the one of his, and on the other one, I'm wearing the older son. And then at the end of the day, we were walking home, and my older son pulled out his set of earrings for me. He said, "Here, for you." Like in his way, he had
Oh,
sought them out. These are the ones I made. I'm going to buy them and give them to you. And just one of those moments that make it all worthwhile.
yeah. And
There's so many of those, but yeah.
we're recording this the week of Mother's Day, so it's just so poignant and so sweet. And I just want to say that, my son is 22, and the way I got him to call me, and his last final is today. So yesterday, as we're recording this, was Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
So I texted him, remember to call Graham. It's my mother.
Yeah,
And then about half an hour later, I got a call. I'm not sure
nice.
what I'm
Oh, I
a
love
great
that.
kid. I mean, we're talking about sensitive boys here,
Yeah.
and they're great kids, and they are so thoughtful and so easily overwhelmed.
Mm.
So, that's where mine was on
I
Mother's
love the picture that you posted of him to share the talk you were doing on Mother's Day. So
Day.
good.
Yeah, it was such a sweet. That was the day I dropped him off at college.
How old was he there?
19, 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he had just
Congratulations.
spent the summer in Thailand and Nepal in monasteries, which was why he
Wow.
was shaved in that picture. So you all can go find my Instagram and look back to May 2023 and see that photograph.
Yeah,
So
so nice. Thank you. So today we're talking about it's Mental Health Awareness Month.
mm.
You're a therapist, you're many things, you're a highly sensitive person, consultant, highly sensitive. How do you say that? Highly
Oh, that my certification, international consultant on high sensitivity.
okay. Um I mean, I don't have to tell you who you are, but I know you to be that person, and I've been lucky to get to know you over these years. for those who, this is the first time joining my conversation with Alane. I first met Alane when I reached out to Alane Aaron, the pioneering researcher and therapist who coined the term highly sensitive person, and said, "Would you like to come on my podcast, Alane Aaron?" And she said, "I would love to, but I'm not available, but I have the perfect person for you." And her name is Alane Freund, and the rest is history. I don't get tired of telling that story.
I love that. And that was the year that you were doing motherhood as your theme that year. And so we were joined. That was our first sort of getting to know each other as moms as well as professionals.
Yeah, true. I really appreciate your warmth and open heart. So thank you for enabling this relationship to develop and flourish. And so today we're going to be talking about what we've both thrown out together, and you've sort of put it in a nicely coherent phrase. So mental health, and specifically high sensitivity, anxiety with the ADHD overlay. Does that sound right?
Well, I remember in our conversations, we were kind of wondering and talking about how do anxiety, ADHD, and high sensitivity all interact or overlay? How do you define them, diagnose? What are the issues involved? It seems like there's so many questions about that out in the world. And since anxiety and ADHD are both mental illnesses, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, it seemed like a good topic for us.
Yeah. And I'm coming at it also with, experience navigating this as a parent, also questioning my own youth, adolescence, and adulthood with one or various of these potential experiences, and also as a coach, as a friend to friends who have children navigating different diagnoses or labels or inquiries. So there's lots there to work with. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I had a conversation with my son yesterday when he called me for Mother's Day. And I asked him, his last final in organic chemistry is today.
Wow.
And at the end of his semester, he's a first semester senior, finishing the first semester of his senior year of college. And I asked him if he was using extra time for his final exam. And he said, yes. He said, I don't think I'll need it, but I'm going to use it. He has accommodations. And I think for what? Well, we can talk about that, although that's his story. And that's always that issue, right?
Yeah.
We work in areas that are unique to us personally, but also unique to us professionally. So I'm going to speak in more general terms, but accommodations means that you have a learning disability that causes you to not be able to achieve or to perform at what your intellectual ability would allow you to if you didn't have it. So mental illness also counts in the world of learning disabilities. So as we were talking, I asked him if he was using extra time because I got him accommodation. I got him assessed in 9th grade, which is about age 14 in the US. And he had gone to very small alternative schools. So he had lots of leeway in terms, and he barely had exams, frankly, until high school. And then he got to high school and he took the entrance exams to see which math you should be in, which science you should be in, which Spanish level. And he basically failed them all, even though he's very gifted academically. And it was test anxiety. Right? Basically, they were given in the gym, all the incoming 9th graders, there were 80 of them, were in the gym of this high school taking the test at the same time. I mean, if you imagine a highly sensitive kid who's been in a small alternative school, and is, the pressure is so great. So I spent a lot of money outside the school district to get him assessed at that time. And he got accommodations of, in fact, they recommended the neuropsychologist recommended that he have double time for exams.
Okay.
Because his processing and whatever. And the school only offers 1.5 time. Still, that was plenty because you know what it did? It took the pressure off. So anyway, when I was talking to him yesterday, I said, I'm really glad you're using the extra time, even if you don't need it, because of the pressure is just builds up. And I really wish I had that. I would have a different career today. I would still be doing all the same things I'm doing, but I would be being paid quadruple because I'd have a medical degree, a medical license. Wow. And, if somebody had known, but we just didn't know. like, I think we're all so much more savvy now. And I mean, my parents didn't have a clue about that kind of thing. And frankly, if you're bright and highly sensitive, you can probably perform pretty well at school. Like, nobody's going to say, oh, that kid has learning disabilities.
Right.
But if you start to look like ADHD or anxiety, then somebody might wonder what's going on there. And it's hard to figure it out. It's hard to parse it all out into the right categories. So I think that's partly why we're here today.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Also, it's like, what's with the urgency, people? Like, what is it that we need to create, like this constraint over time for us to perform exams?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other story, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's back to that whole thing of the 80% world. Like, the
Yeah.
world is designed for the majority, and the majority of people do not overthink exams.
So, like, it's not a problem to get through an exam in 2 hours. I always felt the pressure of time.
No, it's not.
I
a
just
problem
assumed
for most
everybody
people.
does.
No, absolutely not.
No?
They read the question and they answer it without thinking
Oh,
about it,
interesting.
really. And it's like they just do it. And if you're me or my kid, and many, many highly sensitive youth, the way they take an exam is they think about every word in the question as they read it.
Yeah.
They think about all the possibilities, and multiple choice exams are the worst.
Yes. Terrible.
The worst, right? Because here's the thing. I took a prep class for the LSAT, the law school entrance exam. I've been in many different paths in my life.
Wow. Okay.
For a while there, I was going to be the first woman president, and law school was part of the path, right?
Wow.
So I took this Stanley Kaplan course, and I think it was there. Maybe it was the Princeton Review book, prepping for, I don't know. Then I took the GREs, prepping for some exam. Anyway, this light bulb went off when I was studying how to take the exams. And what it said was, the exam wants the exam's correct answer, not necessarily the right answer.
Yeah.
What a trap for a highly sensitive mind.
Yes.
Because, and most people have heard me joke about how I couldn't pass the test that Elaine Aaron wrote about being about psychotherapy in the highly sensitive person.
I never heard this.
Certified. Coaches can also get certified, actually, on her website, in case anybody who's a coach is listening and interested.
Yeah.
But there's a pretty hard 75 question exam that follows the book, Psychotherapy in the Highly Sensitive Person. And, it's like this study, which researcher said blah, and then there's 4 choices. I'm like, well, that one said kind of that, and that one said kind of that, like, which right?
Oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah.
So when I started trying to figure that, what does the exam writer want as an answer? That really helped me a lot, but it takes a lot of time to do all that extra thinking, right? So I performed really well in some sections of those standardized exams as a young adult and teenager. And other sections I performed really either average or slightly low. The ones that, guess what, required reading. I'm a therapist and a writer. I should do amazingly on the verbal sections of those exams. And I didn't, because I was thinking.
Who's writing these assessments? Who's creating these evaluations? I mean, these are other topics, but it also brings me to this idea of self-assessments, like even taking, like there's the HSP quiz on Alane Aaron's.
Yeah.
But then there's also, because I work with self-assessments in the coaching world, like, where executives or clients or professionals have to self-assess, like with a strength report or with another type of assessment.
Right.
And I've had to do it too. And I trip up on it because I'm thinking so much. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell the answer is. Like,
I know.
is my IQ minus something? I don't know, It's
I have a hack for highly sensitive people on these kinds of things. Ask your partner or your best friend to tell you what your answers are.
That's good.
Right? And then whatever they say, if they're really wrong, you'll know right away.
Yeah.
But it keeps you from thinking. It really, really helps. And one that most people know about, probably in our general public, is the Myers-Briggs personality assessment, right? ENFP, INTJ, whatever.
Yeah.
And I could tell you the best way for me to tell you what my results on Myers-Briggs are is to read the description of each of them and then just tell you.
Right. Exactly.
I take all those questions.
I know.
It's practically impossible. So it's a really important
can I
issue that,
self-assess myself wrongly? You know,
yeah,
like
I know
it's
exactly.
like how to like it's like gaslighting yourself, you know?
It is. And I think, we do better with a narrative.
Yeah.
If you could write an essay about who you are, then, and then a psychologist could tell you what your strengths are, what your, or a coach could tell you what your strengths are, a psychologist could tell you what your personality type is,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Right. We always want to know, like, tell us who I am. Tell
Yeah,
me out there who I am, you know?
true.
Oh my God, so many tangents. So mental health, what does that mean? I heard you refer to some of the things we want to talk about as mental illness, so I'm interested in that.
Hmm.
Like, I heard somebody recently say ADHD is not, like, why are we pathologizing ADHD, for
Right.
example?
Because
Like
it's just
yeah,
diversity of
it's
brain,
diversity.
right?
Perhaps it's how we're adapting. Our kids are adapting. Our adults have
Yeah.
adapted. I don't know.
Well,
Um, to
there's
fit
a
into something that is,
so if you start thinking about neurodiversity, and it's a big political thing, like a cultural shift happening. Do
right.
we really need to pathologize how different brains work?
Yeah.
Here, now I'm coming from the psychological lens, right? My
Okay.
first master's was in clinical psychology, and my second one was in school counseling, which is also a very traditional world, right?
Yeah.
When you're in the public school system. So, um, the issue is that when something is designated a mental illness, if then you can get treatment,
Mm.
if there's treatment, right? And if we don't say it's a mental illness, then the health insurance company is not going to help you.
So we work within the system, right?
Yeah, we work within
Otherwise,
the system. And I don't think it's, I wish we could fix the stigma around mental illness. I mean, I don't want to be too tangential, but I don't want to have talked about standardized tests without talking about how racist and classist they are,
yeah.
right? There's another
Yeah.
way that they don't work for a huge segment of the population. So basically, let's just say that if there's any way that you're not the most mainstream where these tests are written, you're discriminated against, right? And then I want to say that, like, we can't talk about mental illness without talking about all the random shootings that are happening. Like, the vast majority of people who are going into churches and schools and killing and hurting people are mentally ill,
Yeah.
right? Without access to care. So I'm not opposed to calling things mental illness. I can understand the movement and the activists around autism and ADHD as two big ones, being
Yeah.
our diversity, and not being mental illness is just being diverse ways that our brains work. However, if it can be, and maybe most of these people are talking about quite high functioning on
Right.
these different spectrums.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're lower functioning, if you're in need of treatment and there is treatment, let's not take that away from people.
Or of course. Yeah.
It's a complex issue. We can't just say ADHD should not be called mental illness. Autism is not a mental illness. It's not a diagnosis. We can't just go there, because it just really cheats people who need help from being able to
Hmm.
get it. So
It's
there's
a
my little
privilege, is what
political
you're
rant.
saying. It's a
Yeah,
privilege to say it's not an
it is a privilege.
illness.
Yeah, exactly. So, like so many things, and here we are, white women, we each have our own unique ways that we're diverse, but we also have that privilege,
Yes.
like in the end, I got into really great schools because I did perform well, even without accommodations on those
Right.
standardized tests, right? Because they were written for me, or maybe for at least a male version of me.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for speaking to that. Yeah.
yeah, thank you for letting me go off. So,
No, please go. Go
okay, so
off where you may.
these mental health, mental illness, whatever it is, I guess I'm here to say that between 20 and 30% of the population have a more sensitive, more reactive brain. And it can look like a mental illness when the environment is not working. So, or when childhood was rough.
Yeah.
So, the theme of 2023 Mental Health Awareness Month is look around, look within. And look around, I'm just so grabbed onto that for highly sensitive people, because the environment is everything.
Hmm.
We are more susceptible to our environment. And our environment as children is even more important. In fact, if we had a negative environment or too much stress as children, as highly sensitive children, then we are more likely to have mental illnesses. to struggle with our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Then we need to look within. So
So it's a proclivity towards mental illness when we have the HSP trait. Is that
in
what?
stressful, negative, or in some way abusive environments,
Okay.
right? We are more reactive. We're more, but we can't go further without saying we are actually more reactive even to positive environments.
Mm-hmm.
So than we are to negative environments. Okay, so sensory processing sensitivity, the scientific name for HSP or high sensitivity, is simply a different way that the brain works. It is not a mental illness. There is no treatment. People ask me all the time, how can I be less sensitive? You can't.
Mm-hmm.
If you were born that way, you were born that way for a reason. It's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not treatable, it's not changeable, and it's not a mental illness, and it's not a diagnosis. It's a personality trait connected to your temperament. So you can't change it, but you can look around and change your environment, right? So, and I'm especially passionate about youth.
Yeah.
And I guess one of my concerns about ADHD and anxiety is youth getting appropriately diagnosed or identified, getting treatment, or being misdiagnosed and misidentified and getting treatment they don't need.
Mm-hmm.
These are big issues for families and for youth themselves to know what's just how my brain works. Like, can I design a life compatible with my more processing, more thinking, more noticing, more emotional brain? Or am I living out there in a world that's not designed for it? And so I just feel crazy all the time.
Mm-hmm. Very different.
And then you get called crazy, right?
Right.
Or mentally ill.
So on this continuum of mental health, HSP expresses itself is a healthy expression, is a healthy expression, it's a natural expression, but can be altered by the environment, by history, by early childhood experience, adverse childhood experience, is what you're saying. And ADHD and anxiety, I'm just curious about that continuum. Like, I know you've told me, and it's like as if I've never had this conversation with you before. It's like, how many times do I need to hear this? So those who have HSP are prone to anxiety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
In only more susceptible and more prone to anxiety when the environment is difficult or when the childhood was difficult.
Even if they can't recall it being difficult.
Right. But we are less likely to be anxious if we had a good childhood. Less likely.
What if you're anxious and you still had a good childhood? Am I talking about myself? What is good childhood? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Of course, there's different levels. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like even if your parents did a fabulous job, they saw you for who you are, they honored the fact that you were so sensitive and inquisitive and had so many feelings and had an opinion about everything and noticed every little thing that was wrong or right.
That wasn't the case, but yeah.
If you had that childhood, but then you went to school or you went and played in the neighborhood with the other children and their families, and those environments maybe didn't see and honor you.
Right.
I think sensitive children and sensitive youth are frequently still in this day and age shamed.
Yeah.
For their stronger thinking, noticing, and feeling brains. And that makes them feel so overwhelmed. And overwhelmed looks like anxiety. Oh, maybe this is where we're going with this. Like, we are, of course, more likely to be overwhelmed by our environment because we're taking so much more information in and processing it so much more.
Right.
And when do we go from overwhelm or overstimulation to anxiety?
Right.
It's because you can't treat overwhelm, but you can treat anxiety. That's a little.
So I'm curious about that. And of course, I had a very loving childhood with loving parents, but it's also like, what about me feels like it can freely express itself, and that's not just about the people who I lived with. It's also like the camps I went to and the kids I was surrounded by and all those coaches that I had when I was an athlete. So yeah, what went awry, for the anxiety to become what it became?
Nothing went awry, Julie, because you're like doing amazing work in the world. Like you are not institutionalized. You're like an amazing mom to two young boys. You have a great marriage. I mean, listen, all marriage is difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
are a very high functioning adult in the world as a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
What went wrong is you're living in a world that's not designed for your brain.
Right.
But what went right is you've done a really good job of creating work and environments that do work for you. So like what's the worst possible environment for a sensitive youth? The school system.
Okay.
Right? It's a really hard place to be. I mean, teachers are amazing. I always say nobody becomes a teacher or a pediatrician for the money. Like,
Mm,
you could
they
take
are.
those skills and leverage them into something a lot more. They do it because they love children and they want
Yeah.
to work with children, right? My niece just got a job, her first job post school. She's going to be a first grade teacher next year.
Wow.
That's a special gift,
It is.
right?
Truly.
She's not doing it to get rich and famous.
That's incredible.
So, but she's going to have 20 to 30, or maybe in some places 40 kids in her classroom. And she's going to do everything she possibly can because she loves children and she wants to help them and teach them.
Amazing.
And those sensitive children are going to sometimes drive her bonkers and sometimes get missed
Yeah.
because they're the minority, and they aren't able to identify what their needs are that are
Mhm.
different. So then they're going to feel overwhelmed a lot. And when you're overwhelmed looks a lot in a highly sensitive child or adult, youth, whatever, looks a lot like both ADD and anxiety. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about that as well as those who get misdiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
maybe you want to get to that. And also, you said ADD. You also use ADHD.
Yeah.
You want to just talk about
Let's just
that?
clarify that for a
Yeah,
moment.
clarify that.
ADD isn't even really a real diagnosis anymore. And so attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder is the diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And now there are different types of ADHD instead of separate diagnoses. And one is inattentive type. And there's a few that have inattentive in them. And all that means is that struggling to hold attention. And there are rules around diagnosis. And I'm not bringing them here because I'm not here. I'm here with mental health experience and I am a licensed therapist, but I'm not being anybody's therapist who's listening right here. So you can look up the diagnostic criteria or ask your pediatrician. So how long it goes on, how frequent it is, what it takes to change it, things like that are questions in diagnostics. So when a sensitive youth or adult is overwhelmed or overstimulated, trying to do too much, then what happens is they lose their ability to concentrate and focus, right? It's a stress response to doing too much. So it's heck of hard to focus. In my household, we're all highly sensitive here. And sometimes you'll hear one of us say, especially me, I'm the most likely to say this, I always say I'm a toast burner. So, and I always go ADD, which is attention deficit disorder. That's what they used to call inattentive ADHD, ADD. So we do have such a hard time focusing, but not when we're not overwhelmed. So if you've been on retreat, you've been on a really good run out in nature in the morning before your kids got up, and or you did your yoga and you journaled and you got enough sleep and you ate great and you had just enough social interaction for whatever you need, because we're all
Yeah.
different that way too. Then how's your focus?
Mm-hmm.
Your focus is amazing if all you are is highly sensitive. So it's not enough to only have an attention issue when you're overwhelmed and scatterbrained because you've done too much and you haven't given your brain enough rest. And yes, I'm sorry to say you need a heck of a lot more downtime and rest than the majority of people do. It's totally normal. It's annoying as heck for people like me who are high sensation seekers. I mean, I just had I'm writing a new blog. It'll probably, by the time most people hear it, maybe it'll be up on my website. It's going to be called this insight I had in therapy last week, which is at 58, I'm deciding finally, I'm no longer capable of doing more than I am capable of doing.
I like
So
that.
I've lived my life doing more than I'm capable of doing and being pretty much constantly spread too thin, overcommitted, doing too much,
Mhm.
especially with this brain. I
Mhm.
love my brain. I really do. I honor it. And I have to give it a lot more downtime. And I'm, kind of hitting a wall on that. And it's just so baffling to me. So, I guess I would ask people in the comments, please tell us, are you doing more than you're capable of doing as a highly sensitive person? I kind of think living in the modern world, most of us are. And guess what that does? It makes us more chronically overwhelmed. Guess what that does sometimes? It makes us look like we have ADD or attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And it can legitimately make us anxious for sure. Like chronic overwhelm can turn into anxiety. I have plenty of anxiety attacks personally. I'm an expert at it.
And what about exhaustion and burnout?
Yeah. I mean, what about that? I
Like, does
guess
that
that's what got me to that statement, right?
exactly? Thank you for
So
sharing that. Yeah.
all
And we're
those
always
things,
learning our limits, right? Like it's a continuous process. It's like,
it
I thought
is.
I had that one figured out. No, you didn't. Gonna be
And
sidelined today.
I think the problem is that we're living in a world that really does not honor and respect our minority, right? So um, we look and feel mentally ill a good deal of the time, just because we don't function mentally the same way that the majority does. And I that does cause a lot of exhaustion and burnout. It can
Mm,
just be exhausting just to be in your own head if you're highly sensitive.
yeah.
So somebody posted something on social media about introverts, um, how introverts really know life is short and really appreciate and value every day and want to go deep every day and really process deeply everything that's happening around them. And I have to say, wait a minute, you're talking about highly sensitive introverts,
Hmm.
right? We go deep and we need that time to ourselves to do that. Plenty of people are introverted without having a highly sensitive brain, right? They're like in technology
Yeah.
and science, like they're just using their introversion to really be intensively working on things, or maybe they have other things going on. This one kind of introvert that is doing all that. It's a beautiful thing about our brains.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I love how you help us understand the power of being highly sensitive, how to manage it, expectations, how to manage those. And I'll reference all of our conversations in the podcasts as well, in the notes, as well as all the offerings that you have. And of course, you can tell people more about that towards the end of our conversation. But I'm curious as we move along. I don't know if you see it. Is this a continuum, like HSP, you know,
Oh,
health, and then progressively
hmm.
reducing the function of
I mean,
our?
I think we didn't. One of the issues I guess we haven't touched on enough is that misdiagnosis piece.
Yeah.
Like a lot of sensitive youth, I think, get diagnosed with ADHD. And I don't have stats on it because there are way more lenses. Elaine Aaron taught me this, that whoever you go to for your mental health or medical professional, they have their area of expertise. If you go to an ADHD person, they're going to see ADHD and diagnose it.
Yeah.
And if you go to an autism person, they're going to see autism and diagnose it. And if you go to someone who is, say, a highly sensitive person coach, and they're not using the whole psychological side of it, maybe they're going to say you're highly sensitive and miss ADHD
Yeah.
or anxiety or autism. So, but the issue is this: it's really important that when we think a youth thinks they themselves have ADHD, that when they go to see the professional, that they seek help, most importantly, parents and youth. When you go, you've got to educate the provider about high sensitivity if you're a highly sensitive person. So if you're highly sensitive, I always say this: if you want to put your kids on stimulant medication for ADHD, because that's what's recommended to parents of children and youth with ADHD and adults, if you don't first take away the screens and create a really healthy childhood environment, like take it back 100 years, create a life for your child
Yeah.
pre-internet, and let their brain relax and be in nature. Summer's a great time to do that. Like camp a lot. Maybe let your kids, if you have a backyard, let your kids sleep in a tent in the backyard without their phones and without electricity for the whole summer. And then see what happens.
Mm.
Their ability to concentrate and focus and create and write novels and build huge machines or whatever, it just comes back.
Yeah.
So those sensitive kids may not have ADHD. So the issue, and now I think an ADHD diagnosis is amazing because it gets you accommodations. It gets you extra time at school, that kind of thing. And it might take a really special kind of psychologist to do the evaluation to get those kind of accommodations without ADHD. Really easy to get a sensitive kid an ADHD diagnosis.
Right.
Just don't treat them, because stimulants on a sensitive brain can be really difficult. It can get the brain so jacked up, the kid so jacked up that they can't sleep. Right? We're already over. What's the number one problem with being highly sensitive? Overstimulation.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to give somebody inclined toward overstimulation a stimulant medication, which is how we treat ADHD? Probably not.
So it's a different brain.
It's a different brain completely, but it looks very similar. So for part of a highly sensitive person, most highly sensitive people, I would say, look like they have ADHD part of the time. This is complicated.
It's complicated because I also think, can they both be present in a brain?
It's controversial, Julie.
Yeah.
My answer is I don't believe so. But there's just so much more research on ADHD in kids than there is sensitivity. So I think we're probably a good 10 years away from that answer in terms of the research. I think maybe it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Maybe it doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is how we treat the brain.
Right.
So, how do we treat a sensitive youth with anxiety or ADHD? And sometimes anxiety meds are indicated. However, the standard anxiety medications are mostly addictive, right? And many people with anxiety self-medicate with lots of different substances or screens. Like I self-medicate my anxiety quite a bit with television. Food. Oh yeah, I'm a big sugar addict. Like addictions become the self-medication, right? So there, of course, is some fabulous coaching and psychological treatment for these things, and for ADHD and anxiety. And so I think it's really important that we go there first. First, I mentioned like change that freaking environment now, yesterday.
Yeah.
Change the environment and see what happens to the brain, whether we're talking to the adult, the youth, the parent, whomever.
And the parent listening to that, it's like, whew, the struggle to change the environment.
Oh, the struggle, so
but
hard.
Like, that's another conversation. But yes, I agree. Change the environment.
Change the environment. But the thing is, look, it can be life or death. Like, it's definitely the future of your child.
Totally.
Of their whole life.
That's where the struggle becomes monumental. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the stress, the stress. Like, do you want them to live? And trust me, I screwed this up royally with my kid. I know he's going to be amazing. I did a lot of things right, but the level of stress, like we need to get them the interventions they need. Like every day, how they say, when should you plant a tree? And the answer is yesterday. Right? And so when should you plant the tools for navigating stress in your child? Yesterday. Every day is a new opportunity.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to read you something because this post created stress in me when that was not the intent, I imagine. Adam Grant, I'm sure you know who he is. He's a very prolific scientist, I think I don't know if he describes himself as a scientist. Is he a psychologist? Do you know who he is? Okay. He's just very
Not really. I just
present
know his name.
in some of the circles that I'm in, like executive coaching,
Okay.
and he's also a researcher, and he's been on Brené Brown's podcast a lot, and he has he's always tweeting some scientifically based memes. And so he said this today, or the other day, and I just caught hold of it. It says, I'm just scrolling through my stories so that I can post it. And guess what? I'm not finding it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Here. The earlier kids get smartphones, the worse their mental health as adults. New study, 27,000 plus people owning a smartphone younger. Owning a smartphone, can't say that word. It's because it's such the bane of my existence. Smartphone younger predicts lower self-worth. So owning a smartphone younger predicts lower self-worth, motivation and resilience, and more sadness, anxiety, and aggression, especially for girls. Smartphones should wait until high school.
Absolutely 100% true. Hashtag wait until 8th. Wait until 8th is a whole movement of 8th grade is the last year before high school.
And I titled this, as I shared it, is reading this supposed to make me feel better or worse?
Yeah. So
but yes, I agree. Okay.
I mean, it's so hard. We also, I follow Devorah Heitner, and she's posting stuff about how we train our children to use screens and media.
Digital natives, I think, right?
What?
Is it digital natives? Is that her handle?
I don't remember.
Okay.
And so it is important that we teach them.
Yeah.
That we monitor it. She says, what about a youth who is isolated with abusive parents in, Idaho? We want them to have access to search, important things that can help them and support them, and to have access to their peers socially. However, a child under the age of 14 does not have the discrimination ability to manage that kind of input. Also, we have to teach them how to monitor. I always say, if you ask your child to get off the screen and they have a fit, like a meltdown, then we're looking at addiction.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't close your computer or your laptop or your phone, you got a problem. I'm into a little Blake Shelton here. Am I doing it right?
Oh God.
I have that problem. Right? I can lose 4 hours. I mean, I'm a professional, so I'm doing it on the email, but it's just that time is just gone. And if we're seeing that in a 11-year-old, then we're going red light warning, right? Okay, so part of the issues with that tweet or that post, part of that happen are, we have to teach our children, and sensitive kids can really get this. In fact, my son used a flip phone all the way until age 15 or 16. And so no internet on his phone, because he did have to have a phone starting around age 10 or 11, because he had a very long commute to school, to his little alternative school. And he needed to be able to ask for help and let us know if there was trouble. He was dependent on other parents, carpool, blah, blah, blah. But so we taught him carefully about how to use it. Here's the thing. One of the things we teach them is, like, nobody posts their worst day or even their real day on social media. I mean, a few people do, but very few.
Right.
And that's why it's so hard for girls' body image, and so many, I just saw somebody saying I think it was on the Wait Until 8th channel, that, if your kid sees that there's a big party, your 13-year-old sees there's a big party and they're not invited, then, they're not going to sleep. They're going to feel terrible about themselves. The point of reference is really scary. So we monitor them. We show them how to do it. We put our own phones down. We don't have conversations with our children with our phone in front of us.
Get off your phone.
But listen,
I just need to send a text.
It's not just a modern issue, because as I just did that, thinking about having a conversation with a kid, I remember my dad had the newspaper like this.
Oh yeah, interesting.
And I'd be trying to talk to him through the newspaper, and okay, and I knew that he was reading. And so it's not just the phone issue. The phone is the new newspaper, right? So we do, when I always say, here's the thing for parents, if you want to support mental health in your children, sensitive or not, when you are engaging with them, engage with them. Like make the eye contact, put everything down and be present. And then when you need to do your work or your own self-medication addiction, that's a separate time.
Yeah.
Right. And so we can't keep the kids from it. But if you're seeing problems, this brings us back to mental health.
Okay.
Right? If there are problems, if the teacher or the parent is identifying potential problems, then we want to clean up the environment, look around the environment to see what is causing it. Because mental illness comes from it. That's the look within piece. It comes from changes in the brain, things that are happening in the brain, right? And in the body. So if we can fix it by changing the environment, then probably they don't have the diagnosis.
Right.
So if you are concerned, A, ask for help from a professional. B, make sure you educate that professional what you know about temperament and sensitivity, because they have not been educated by it. Start educating them now before you have concerns. Give them my talk at Google. It's like so short.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really short. You can speed it up on YouTube just to get the basic science.
So good, yeah.
It's like, and it has a lot of credibility. It's almost 1 million views now. Okay.
I mean, it should have 6 billion views, right?
It should. And so please share it around.
Yes, exactly.
The more it's seen, the more they share it with people. So that's a really good short way with good credibility. Then 3, so ask for help. Make sure you're educating your health professionals and your mental health professionals now. And if it's too late and you're, if they cannot hear you and they think you're crazy for saying it, get someone else. You're the consumer and it's your kid or your own mental health. And
Bring them Elaine Aron's book, right?
Yeah, but they will not read the book. That's why
No,
I
I
say
know.
talk it goes. It's just not the world of reading anymore.
Oh, okay.
But there is what's great in the back of that book. There's those 20 points to give to teachers. That's a great short list that people will read. In fact, you know what we should do?
Yeah.
And Ted Zeff in Strong Sensitive Boy has also advice for teachers. It's maybe a little less, Elaine is so nerdy. So even though
I love the
books have
nerds.
lots of great information, they're really good read. They are a little nerdy. So like, but for Ted Zeff's is a little more chatty.
Okay.
So sometimes his advice, who you're trying to give the information to. But wouldn't that be cool if we just like made each of those a post? I think I'll do that. And maybe even read them. Anyway, educate them. And then if they think in light of that there is a diagnosis, then first look for behavioral sort of executive functioning training, which we all know that pretty much the prefrontal lobe is not finished growing. True executive functioning can't happen before the age of 25. So stop expecting your kids to have executive functioning. You have to train them to fake it till they make it, give them tools,
And executive functioning, can you just clarify what that is for people listening?
The ability to plan your life and make sophisticated choices about how to use your time and manage your life, basically.
Okay.
So like executive functioning coaches, there's this one guy I know that I follow. He has a whole course on how to use the Google platform to create, Google Notes, Google Reminders, Google Calendar, Google this, Google that. He trains you how to use the tools that you have on your device to give external executive function, right? Because we don't really have it. I'm not sure I really have it. At least when I'm overwhelmed, I don't have any myself, back to burning toast.
Right.
So look for how you can make changes in a kid's environment. And then you can train them like executive functioning or maybe using some different therapeutic techniques to teach the youth how to manage their life, to speak up for themselves, to say, I need a little more time to think about this.
Right.
Like I cannot go out every time you want to go out. I don't want this is something I hear from preteen and young teen girls who are sensitive. I hear them say, I don't want them to all come and jump on me screaming and hugging me every time they see me. Yeah. This sort of the young teen girl way. right? And for some introverted, sensitive girls, it just doesn't work for them. So they could actually train their friends. Like, I work differently,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
a quiet hug and only one person at a time or
Hmm.
whatever. We can teach kids to advocate for themselves.
And you were saying, I don't know if you're going to go into like the differentiating factors, like high sensitivity versus ADHD, but you're saying to look for behaviors. You would see behaviors that are different.
Yeah. And um, the big way to differentiate is in a great environment. Same with burnout. Well, no, not same with burnout. In a great environment, the symptoms disappear unless they have become a habit.
Right.
Like if your kid's overbooked or you are overbooked all the time, like I learned in therapy last week, that's my new thing.
Yeah.
If you're always overbooked, then these behaviors become a habit. They
Right.
can become so habitual that they do become, say, anxiety, or maybe you can never get your attention and focus back because you're just always chronically overwhelmed. And then what do? You crash and burn. I guess it is related to burnout, because when that happens, then you hit a bottom, right? Or the youth hits a bottom.
And is this ADHD? It's not just attention and focus, right? I mean, there's so many other things.
Well, the
I mean, we're not.
inattentive type that we're talking about, usually what we see in sensitive youth and adults is the inattentive, the difficulty with focus when overwhelmed.
Okay.
Now, there's another temperament, which is activity level. And some people just have a higher activity level, and some people have a lower activity level. So when the environment is right and say, very few humans are getting enough exercise, that's why, I bow down to you because you're such a good exerciser, such a good role model for all of us, Julie, and in terms of the way you
Thanks.
do self-care. But so many people are not moving enough. So if someone's not moving enough and they feel like agitated, like hyper, as they
Yeah.
said, then, but if then they're in a sport and they're really, they say boys perform better academically if they have athletics in teenage years. If they have athletics and they have to go to practice for 2 or 3 hours a day after school, then they have a much less time in which to do their homework, but they've worn off all of their extra testosterone,
Yeah.
right? And then they have to focus because they only have a couple hours for homework, and
Yeah.
they perform much better academically under those conditions. Well, because adolescents are supposed to be
I
out
mean, it just
there
makes
like
so much more
taking
sense.
care of the family. Yeah, absolutely. So,
I mean, I think intuitively, you know, I mean, there's so many reasons why I need to move, but it also, I tell people it's my mental health. Like, yes, I'm
it
interested in
is.
my physical health. I naturally have
You're an athlete.
I'm an athlete and I need to move, but I need to move first for my mental health, you know,
Absolutely.
because I am an anxious person. I have been anxious when I was in my teens. I went to a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I was put on medication and I went off of it after 6 months just because that's what felt okay to me. Like it took the edge off and then I was ready to go off of it for whatever reason. But it's interesting when we talk about like mental illness and anxiety because there is stigma around it. And like I'm interested in it for myself. Like, how do I perceive that in me, like this anxiety,
Yeah.
and how do I manage it? And of course, I've been working on myself and will continue to through supportive professionals and my own, choices and how I take care of myself. But it's interesting to have this conversation around that and then to see like, is it showing up in my kids? How is it showing up? What is it? Is it HSP? Is it ADHD? Is it anxiety? Is it all of them? Oh my God.
Well, I mean, let's just say for Mental Health Awareness Month that probably, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't have the research to back this, but clinically, let me just say that
Yeah.
the number one most effective treatment for anxiety is exercise,
Mm.
elevated heart rate, and sweat. And and kids and adults both, we need it at least 5 days a week. We are not in bodies that were designed. That's how you burn off all those chemicals. Like
Yeah.
anxiety comes from chemicals that your brain produces, right? And anxiety is is telling you there's something life and death here. Now it's not, but still our brain thinks it is. And so it's like, fighting off the saber-toothed tiger. You get enough chemicals from your brain injected into your body that you could lift a car off of somebody who, off of a child in danger or whatever. That's a lot. How do you use up those chemicals? If you want to prevent anxiety, go burn those chemicals, because they're building up. I'm guaranteeing you, living in this world, especially as a highly sensitive person, but in general, remember, what's good for HSPs is good for everybody. What's good for sensitive youth is good for all youth. If we burn those chemicals up, then we don't have to spend so much time in anxiety, and we don't even need medication. Like, you're right. And it's no wonder that you're an intuitive, like you intuited your way to health.
Yeah.
And, here's, I'm a horsewoman.
Yes.
Horses walk 30 to 50 miles a day.
Wow.
In the wild. My horses are living in a 1 acre lot. So are they going to have some anxiety? Are they going to have some pent up energy?
Yeah.
You better believe it. The horses and I do a lot of walking, and I don't have the best joints at this point. I have a lot of arthritis, and but the more I walk, the better I feel. And generally that's true of pretty much all animals. I know that, like there are animals that hibernate and their systems work differently. And we're supposed to hibernate a little bit in the winter, but we still have to feed ourselves. We don't have that kind of system that can stop eating for a month or two.
Yeah.
So we are supposed to be burning it up. If you don't burn it up, you might as well just plan on anxiety and hyperactivity. So we just solved the issue.
Exercise.
We fixed it.
I think I need to start a new business, or make it a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about creating a anxiety prevention group at my barn, where I want people to come and like clean manure and move gravel and move the compost down into the garden, and and take the horses on hikes and like do all this. Like truly, everybody they'd be in nature, they'd be moving, they'd be doing meaningful work. Anxiety would go away if we all lived that way. I 100% believe it.
That's amazing. I love your work with your colleagues, your horses. And also just want to say, like, there's a place for medication. Obviously, we know that. It goes without saying. And also, I'm noticing in me, like, anxiety on the rise. Like, I'm sitting, working, listening, coaching, mentoring, creating, facilitating groups. Like, if I don't get up, like, it's like imperative. I need to get up, and I could see, like, the cascade of like negative emotions building up, and it's almost not alarming to me, but like I spend way too much time sitting. It's not good for me. Oh wait, you froze. Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
I don't know what you heard last.
You were saying, it says my internet connection's unstable again. So I live in the country, y'all. It's always unpredictable. You said you can feel the negative emotions building up from all the sitting and working and being stagnant.
Yes.
And I love that you post often on Instagram your runs and your time in nature and your exercise, and it's so important. And if we could all do more of that. We all have our different ways that we can move.
Yeah.
And, I have this favorite thing. I encourage people who have limited mobility that I learned from my trainer to call hard style plank, but it's basically just tensing up every single muscle in your body, either starting at the top or starting at the bottom, or starting at your fist and going up your arms and through your core and your neck and your face and your head and your legs and your feet. You tense everything up and you hold it really as tight as you can, and then you release it. And, that's something for sleep too. You're supposed to do that in bed a few times. When you lay down in bed, tense everything up in your body, hold it all so tense, and then release it. It's a signal to your body to release some of those stimulating chemicals in your body. So, folks, you're right. Not just should you, but I would love to see that. Like moving. I mean, you're a mover, and that's one of your gifts and one of your areas of expertise. But like, it is truly the path to healing mental illness. And we're
Mhm.
talking again about anxiety and potential attention deficit. Mostly right now we're talking about chronic overwhelm, and
Yeah.
that can turn into anxiety. And these things are preventable. They truly are, by taking better care of this physical vessel in which we are trying
Yeah.
to live in this world that maybe is not the best environment for it. And
Yeah,
let's
there's
just,
go ahead.
sorry, let's just
No,
do
go.
this disclaimer that for a person who truly does have ADHD,
Mhm.
medication is extremely effective. It
Mhm.
really is. It's
I've
just
heard
that
and seen.
we need skilled differential diagnosis. And a lot of times it's just so easy to throw a kid who seems ADHD-ish on a stimulant. And if they're actually highly sensitive and they don't actually have ADHD, it can be really problematic.
Mhm.
So educate your healthcare professionals. If your gut tells you that they're wrong, get a second opinion. I
Thank
just
you
would
for that.
recommend that.
I remember you saying when we were talking before this conversation, like, we'll bring anxiety into the conversation, and you would ask, like, I'm sure you've had many conversations about anxiety on your podcast, and I'm like, yeah, I have had many conversations, but like, again, like when I talk about sensitivity, it's almost like I'm developing this relationship with these traits or this
Mm.
experience or challenges that I may have had or have. And it always feels new. Like, what did I talk about again? Like with Cheryl Paul, who wrote The Wisdom of Anxiety, and I loved that book and featured it for so many weeks.
Mhm.
And even still, when we talk about anxiety, I'm so curious about that, and I know you've spoken to anxiety with HSP related, and you have so much content, and I want people to go to your blog, join your membership. Do you want to tell people, like, is this a good time to start wrapping up, do you think?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay.
So
So you
yeah,
want to,
I think I'm trying really hard to put everything that I can think of on YouTube. I,
you do.
I'm a perfectionist, and I have I really struggle with my writer's block. When I can write, I can really write. And when I can't write, I really can't. But I can always talk.
It's good.
Even though I'm an introvert, I'm a profound introvert, y'all. But I can talk about something that helps others. Like I can teach, I can get on stage even
You're so good.
and talk easily. It's just one of the things, it's my empathy. It's sort of my codependency in a way that I can put away my performance anxiety or my introversion. Not that I'm not completely exhausted afterwards. For sure I am. And I don't have a lot of stress. Like that Google talk,
Yeah.
that pretty much worked me over for a year, like getting ready for it. And then afterwards, the fact that they own it, I can't
Yeah.
change it, and I'll give a little teaser. Like the lapel of my jacket was wrong for half the talk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, and I stressed about hair and makeup and clothes. And
I
I
get
mean,
that.
oh, so yeah, it's hard for me, but I can talk. So I'm on
Yeah.
YouTube. I've gotten over, I don't even see myself in the camera anymore. Like you're commenting on the hair, and I am experimenting with having a short haircut. But like I just don't even look at myself. I don't look at myself in the mirror either, frankly. I just get up and talk. So
Great.
that's I have the gift of gab. So
So good.
YouTube, and my YouTube channel is now called Are You Highly Sensitive? So if you go on YouTube and you either type in my name or Are You Highly Sensitive, and you can search anxiety, because I think we do dance with anxiety, and it's important to be aware of it. And I teach 2 master classes every month, one geared toward parents and reframing childhood, and one geared toward anything having to do with high sensitivity. And they're basically open forums. I bring a theme each time, but it's an open forum. You can ask me anything. And if I don't answer the question in the master class, you can send me an email and ask me a question, and I'll make you a little YouTube video, because I notice that whatever anybody asks, everybody else wants to hear too.
Yeah.
By talking about it, we benefit others all the time. And so I really invite folks to check it out. The other thing I want to say is I worked really hard on my website.
I
I
understand
spent
that.
3 years writing that puppy,
Wow.
and hired a real coaching professional to help me get it. So there's a lot of writing on there, and I'm blogging on it, and I have FAQ for HSPs, and lots of stuff on there. So please just go check it out and give me some feedback. Ask me a question. Let me know. There's a contact form on there. You can always reach us. So
You're
thank you for
amazing.
the
You're such a
opportunity.
pro. You're so kind and open-hearted and knowledgeable and such a great speaker.
Oh,
So
thank
much
you.
wisdom. And yeah, I will forever be promoting and sharing what you do and who you are. And one day we will get to meet in person. And then we
Yes,
will share that on all social media outlets,
absolutely.
whatever the hairstyle may be. Um, and thank you for your time,
Oh,
because it
thank
does take so much, right, to be here
it
present,
does.
and then like
Yeah,
we got to take care of ourselves afterwards. But when we're here, we're fully here, right?
we
So
are.
honoring what it takes to be here. So
Thank
thank you
you. And
so
thank you for
much.
all your good work in the world too, Julie. I learned so much from you as well.
My
So
pleasure. We will meet
keep,
again soon in this way.
absolutely. And we'll keep changing the world together. Bye.
Can't wait.